About 23% of our pregnancies were teenagers. All of them are defiled.
My name is Paul Bachbinga, and I'm a Ugandan journalist based in London. As a father and a citizen of this country, I've been horrified by the stories of sexual violence and incest involving young girls in northern Uganda.
It was very tough because some of these things I had not experienced them. A father having sexual intercourse with a daughter, a granddaughter.
There's nobody who can really support the person who has been raped. To me, I look at this justice as a weak justice.
This region suffered a 20-year hideous insurgency.
About 25 dead bodies myself.
I describe it as the war was fought in the body of the woman, and the woman became the battlefield.
The war ended about 15 years ago, but is a post-conflict legacy just as horrific as the war itself? I was born in Uganda, and most of the early part of my life was spent in Uganda. After the recent lockdown due to the COVID pandemic, there were these horrific tales that came out of this country about an increase in teenage pregnancy. But there seemed to be even more tales that were coming from northern Uganda, particularly about abuse of young girls. And I was interested in finding out what exactly was happening here in the underbelly of this society. That is why I came to Acholi in northern Uganda. The population of this region is just over 2 million, and with close to 70% of people living in poverty, it's one of the poorest regions in the country. Gulu, roughly 330 kilometers from the capital Kampala, is the commercial and administrative city of the north. I'm starting here at the Regional General Hospital's antenatal ward.
Good girl, chol, 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 and all. Chol, baby, all, chol, chol, chol. From the last financial year's report, about 23% of our pregnancies were teenagers. If I'm talking of teenage mothers, all of them are defiled. They're teenagers, they're not supposed to be pregnant.
In Uganda, defilement means unlawful sexual intercourse with a girl below the age of 18, which is the age of consent here. So, a quarter of the babies Dr. Baifa's team helped deliver safely are born to child mothers.
Teenage pregnancies is a challenge in our system. A young mother alone is a complication in itself. She has been in labor since yesterday, so deliver by sister.
If a girl is under 14, or her abuser is a carer or HIV positive, or a repeat offender, it becomes aggravated defilement. Incest is a separate crime under the Penal Code.
Because they are young, their body is not developed to handle a delivery, a pregnancy, and all. And you'll find that young mothers are the highest proportion of those dying of obstructed labor. The younger the mother, the more the complication.
A harrowing report published during the pandemic reflected a 300% increase in girls aged 10 to 14 giving birth in Uganda as a whole. The figures are highest in rural areas, so I'm heading out of the city to Kitgum district. It's a Sunday morning and the joyous sound of the church service emanates across the countryside. I'm meeting a group of women who have met through the church and have joined forces to help their community.
Wache dana mage miyo kony, but mege mage tie kipero mapadi geng makamege pelu an gino mo again cause mani ko beli kibabani kipeke ker mo again na konyo in chewango kwanyo kani ubino konyin wekin.
Grace is visiting a little girl who's 8 months pregnant and living alone. They think she's 11 or 12 years old. This child's parents' cassava business failed, so they returned to their village far away to farm to try to provide something for their family.
By the time I go to Fuicharo, go where Luteno can get it out. Just perro bedo, gap mono beri kingi kilunyodo.
No one knows who the father is or what happened here. We're only allowed to film here with the local community leaders' support. David is in loco parentis and wants to raise awareness of the sexual violence happening here.
She was left here because here is a little bit nearer to the schools. But the unfortunate part, the next room here is where people drinks. That alone has exposed her to a lot of challenges. When she looked at other fellow girls who are not pregnant, she cried. That is our lifestyle. And Mati in it. Rama Beranga. What do you might be president? Tinya. What be very one come and to her be getting more again. In a week, we always have like 3 cases of defilement. Sometimes when we get the perpetrator, we have to tie them with the ropes and take them and escort them to the police. But they don't bother to follow it up. There's nobody who can really support the person who has been raped. To me, I look at this justice as a weak justice.
It's odd to be in this place, even heartbreaking. Her parents have left her here, ostensibly for her to be able to get a better education. But here she is, pregnant, alone, frightened. I'm utterly disgusted and appalled, but also it gives me a sense of helplessness. What does it mean for the next generation? Is this really the new normal? I grew up in the South, and in many ways, it was another world. A war, an insurgency ravaged this region for 20 years, known in the West as Konyi's War.
Once again, the town of Gulu is at the center of fear
The
and
LRA
insecurity.
often threaten that they will come and take revenge raids on children that are
A lot of
asleep.
prisoners of war, a lot of ammunition and arms.
Coming back to Uganda.
Joseph Kony and Acholi led the Lord's Resistance Army, a rebel group which wanted to overthrow the government.
Lord's resistance rebels in northern Uganda have been active
I've
again.
seen about 25 dead bodies myself. I visited 3
He was infamous for his inhumane treatment of those he abducted, maiming, cutting off lips and limbs, forcing people into submission through fear.
From Sudan, in bands of several hundred, attacking villages.
Almost every child here has lost a parent to the violence. They're taught to know Kony's name and to fear it.
It is estimated that 40,000 children were abducted and 1.7 million people lived in internally displaced persons camps created by the government in theory, to keep people safe. It wasn't until 2008 that the war came to an end, though Konye's whereabouts are still unknown. The war here is a highly relevant context. Pamela Ngwech runs an organization working with the community post-war.
Living within a toxic, minefield environment had a long-term effects on the community. People are used to seeing dead bodies, people are used to seeing death. People begin to think that sexual and gender-based abuse seems to be not the highest level of abuse. Sexual abuse was used as a military strategy by the LRA team. I describe it as the war was fought in the body of the woman and the woman became the battlefield. One woman described a situation where she was abducted with her 3 sons and 2 daughters. And then they say, we want your son to sleep with you, or else we shall shoot him now. But the son said, no, over my dead body, I cannot sleep with my mother in front of you. But the mother begged the son and said, please, you need to live longer and you need to stay alive.
Pamela's organization is trying to counter a warped psyche ingrained. Christopher is one of over 1,000 men who, having had violent pasts, have been trained to help change the way women are treated.
Actually, come in 1996. Tidam can come ke ko ma cha cha ma ting picking up can you we ko tin can we ko cha cha can you now. Well da cha ti mu kan ma no dum ro ta twal pe ko na jimu kan me na be la chen na du kan be apart from mat ko an ka kan lo en ba du lo na gan ka we ko ta mo no wi no la ko ma du so ka ma dum cha ko dum bi ma dum ye ma dang cha ne an dum ye la we ke ko ma ta ko ke ne
ama ka cha du ga ma anyu le ma la ma be du no me la du ko na nge ne be bi na no de
em ko ma dan be ke kam u du gi ba chen gan gan lo ke no chan ti dan be ke wa no ti ka cha wi ni ke wer mo ko wer ke be ke wa te en to ke to ne you know child aided families did water no le ti ka ko ken gi pinge ju ma diro dan be ka lakin pun ba lu dir ke ne gi mio.
The LRA war brought further challenges for thousands of abductees who returned. Many children born in captivity simply don't know their parents and may have been born across the border. In the Ugandan constitution, they are considered stateless. They don't exist on paper. Pamela's organization works with returnees.
They miss out of opportunities. So we did skilling of these girls. Some of them decided to choose a baking academy and they learned very many skills in baking, and now they are using it as a business for their own empowerment.
Mano, make you up on garden. Ukonya, Jimmy, I know your business might be tiny. For now, you can be around no, you can mom around for ye, you know, and the 10 of me. Bed la tema mama nyala kilum la mien mama eni mo dugera.
Eunice's mother and aunt were abducted by the LRA when they were teenagers. Both women bore children in captivity. Eunice's mother died at the hands of the LRA, but her aunt, who had twins, took Eunice as her own child too.
I tell Dr. Lotene, Ruda D, Adek, a ching an. My daughter Loteno, my Megan Emmanuel no bear Jabera Chiela Chiel Magalunian Peone. Guano Rueno. Madaka Bielo, Uchening there, Abiero atingo patka dok chunya ko beno. Madong ana chika ngwen magawa na tene kora. Ario ke la tene pachika ngani ngo. Kara mario la wara chel beno wache Evelyn. Gonya tene ngene. Ti gonya la ten kinya. Ti teka neno la ten ma mega bene wono ruenyo. Beta de beno kwanyo ngota ten ma mega ni. Ti daga neno pala mene ki waton tawa ni robamia ene ni ngo ko jabiona.
After a decade in captivity, they were released to a fractured community. It took years for Eunice to know her true story, which has taken a toll.
Karmu Petra. Chapenyo. Away pingono pe wacha chon.
Dano wino. Laka yet pa dano kin community. Mi chwin maloy ma ango. Waripe wani kirne. Chiketa wote ni bet kin wang chwin. Ni dong pe. Tawate yin na yin na tena. Ando an mamani.
Chikarmu wacha. Aberu ka luotu ki kwa ma beru ka kwa. Kirma luotu wate ka kwan. Anba pe ka kwan ki teach. Ano tek pa kwa. Janyuar ki la chomo. Ero kom ano. Ngachan po kanya ki la tena. Katinga dugang.
Eunice's baby is living elsewhere with another aunt. We are told there are too many children here to look after properly. But a small hope lies in her baking business.
We no bake to gone come. Can I go up to Canera and then get my antique walk? Baby, running in here. Chino beru yacht.
It's over 15 years ago that the LRA were formally driven out of northern Uganda, but the after effects of the 20-year-long insurgency continue to ripple through this society. The stories that I've heard from these two women are heartbreaking. I can't imagine how Eunice copes with the multiple layers of loss and rejection. She's one of so many with scars that are incomprehensible, and the lack of any justice or legal redress seems a thread through society. Whilst we have been in the community, I've been put in touch with a lawyer from the NGO Caritas. Just like Pamela, her experience has defined her career path.
Unyuma tote lubo kita chao wati kede ngoma defile me anobedo. Ngati mora wachiwa ngoma defile me anobedo. Growing up from Gulu, I saw so many children getting defiled, and most of those parents did not have the resources to pursue the justice that their children deserved. With these sexual offenses, the perpetrators are always people that are known to the victims. In most cases, it's a relative. When I just started this work, it was very tough because some of these things I had not experienced them. A father having sexual intercourse with a daughter, a granddaughter, it was very traumatic for me. And I think here and there I would break down, like literally break down.
Bien Latin matiri, lugu bama right. Miene beneling or ya da no take mir ka mir pepe en peru bama waro. Icho bene.
Eunice is alerted to some of the cases of defilement and gender-based violence that do get reported to the police. Today, she's taking us with her as she visits the family of one of the most acute cases of sexual violence and incest she's been dealing with over the years.
We're going to visit a family of a child who was defiled when she was about 3 years. Yes, when she was defiled. She was defiled by her stepfather's brother. The mother didn't notice until her walking style, everything like that changed. And then when she asked the girl, she finally disclosed the person who had, sexual intercourse with her. Yeah. In most cases, the family tries to make sure that the issue is handled within the family without having to, seek recourse at police or take legal actions.
Ni gen gimeti loko kugira wera. Madong loko doko tegatida. Nano kom en, chidong kwanyo en, rwako pingo chie, rwaki ot.
Even when a case is taken up by the police, justice here seems to come at a price.
Chi polijo chako penyani megu yeni tie kichane maromo transport. Awaja ni chani ana pe kichane moi can maromo transport. Mana dong en gen karata sa yedong kubu chao mi na kony me transport. Umera update mabuj matie apet mabuj.
You have to literally pay your way to get justice. You have to pay money for fuel to have the suspect apprehended. You're supposed to provide feeding for them while they're still at the police station, because at the police station, they don't have provision for feeding. When you go to health centers, medical persons don't allow to fill police forms without being paid. When you look at the community that I am in, the poverty level is very high, so it's a big challenge.
Medical and police reports confirmed the abuse, and on top of everything, this little girl was infected with a sexually transmitted disease. A tragic piece of evidence in this case.
Tio warawai chani arem tie mukari kumlaten. Matuoni anune.
The suspect was held for 6 months, but because some legal due process wasn't followed correctly, he was released on bail. This mother simply hasn't the means to keep pursuing.
No ko tweyo, itweyo en utiro bucheo, an na meoni loke no putum.
This particular case is not the only case of defilement being done on a very young girl and she doesn't get the justice that she deserves. We have a number of them. I think it says a lot why most people don't have trust in the justice system, because if a 4-year-old doesn't get the justice that they deserve, what happens to a 16-year-old? Or what happens if you don't have money? There is a lot of corruption. People don't fear committing crimes here because they say if you have money, you get out. That is what is happening. That is what happens.
Not one of the instances of sexual abuse that I've seen here have been successfully prosecuted. And hearing that the victims must pay the police and supply the alleged perpetrators meals in custody beggars belief. The head of the police force here agreed to meet me.
Now, with the corruption, it has been a general perception that police officers are corrupt, but not all are corrupt, just like any other institution would be. We have good ones and bad ones. We are not supposed to ask a victim to pay for our services. But sometimes I should accept that we can run out of fuel. Because we're given per month. So there's that possibility that maybe at the time when the crime has been committed, maybe the police officer at that particular station has run out of fuel.
If the police really have no fuel to arrest child abusers and hold victims to ransom, what hope for justice here? Perhaps the Acholi region's Minister of State for Justice can shed light.
I can't deny corruption.
Corruption is there. It's at all levels, even at ministries level. We have laws on defilement. We have laws on incest. But somehow, again, people just go behind the law and bribe police, and then police says, okay, go and settle it at home. There are cases which have been prosecuted, but the number is not high. From the cases which were reported, only 6% reached court. That's what they told me. Defilement has a consequence. Imprisonment and fine. Imprisonment of 20 years even. But it's difficult to enforce somehow.
I don't know whether to be grateful for our honesty or horrified at the acceptance of the hideous status quo here. We have been unable to get confirmation of whether any case of defilement has actually been successfully prosecuted recently. It seems that Choli land has become a preying ground where abusers are on top of the law. Those who can pay, win. I hold some optimism that women like the Mother Buddies, Pamela, Eunice, Dr. Bifer will help many caught in a hideous web. But is it a drop in the ocean? Surely, it's time the government woke up to what is happening if the future of girls here is ever going to be bright.